Novikov getting checked by the medical team, and we will have more on that as it becomes available to us. The fourth of 5 events, the Austrian Oak, the athletes with 90 seconds for max reps, 430 pounds. Now, obviously, you got to be strong. We all know that. But there is a lot of technique involved with this implement.
Yes, the first thing that you need to do is have an efficient lift to the chest. You'll see the athletes squat down, they turn their hands forward typically, and roll the log back up to the top of the chest. The second key is after the implement is on your chest, because it's forward, it's not a barbell, because a barbell's on your shoulders. This is forward of your shoulders. You want to point your elbows back, you want to push back and up, because if you'll notice, the athletes have their hands well forward of their face. So the athletes that will be able to get this log overhead will be the ones that can push back and up the most efficiently.
Here is the order in which we will proceed. Jerry Pritchett will be the first man on the Austrian Oak, followed by Mateusz Kieliszkowski, who has been waiting for these final 2 events. They are really in his wheelhouse. Brian Shaw will go third, and then we will work our way down to the overall leader, Hafthor Bjornsson. Is now just 8 men out of the 10 that started this competition remain. But remember, Alexei Novikov, if he is cleared by the medical staff, will be back in the competition. And Jerry Pritchett will be the first man to lift this 430-pound Austrian Oak. Back-to-back 9th place finishes have basically knocked him out of contention for the overall win. And he's looking now to score some points just to get himself back up into the middle of this overall leaderboard.
This is a beautiful implement, very well balanced. It's heavy, but it's very well made. As you can see, it's even artistically made.
Pritchett is a guy who's been interested in strength training since he was 15 years old. Currently resides in Phoenix, Arizona, where he works as a metal fabricator for a public utilities transportation department and actually builds a lot of the equipment with which he trains for competition, and has been in the ARNOLDD Strongman Classic every year since 2013. His best career finish was in 2017 when he finished in 3rd place overall, and now he approaches the Austrian Oak, 90 seconds for max repetitions at 430 pounds.
Notice how he has his hands turned over, squats down, drives up with his hips, and rolls it back. Now he's got his elbows in a forward position.
Pritchett will reset.
That's a long time to have 430 pounds up to your chest.
Back for his second attempt.
That we've ever had in this business. Now you can watch Magnus for Magnuson. If the hand doesn't come down, the red doesn't count. Let's hear it. Give it big enough.
And Pritchett looks like he is done, and he will step away without recording a single repetition.
On the Austrian Oak, yes, and they'll have the secondary competition. He's got his elbows forward, and he's really trying to just push it back. See, his elbows are forward. That puts his hands in the position closer to his shoulders. If you actually hold your hands perpendicular to the floor, what will happen is you'll just drive up, but that up is directly in front of your face and out, and it'll fall forward.
Mateusz Kieliszkowski from Poland is next, and we saw this man attack a similar implement. It was lighter, it was in Santa Monica, but just basically ripped that thing off the ground and put it over his head in no time. He has been waiting for this event.
Yes, 385 for the Santa Monica implement. This is much heavier at 430 pounds. And he used sort of a snatch technique that all dazzled us.
There was very little pause at the shoulders there on the pier in Santa Monica, but again, this implement much heavier. The Austrian Oak, 430 pounds. And here goes Kieliszkowski on his first attempt.
Oh my God. And you saw how cleanly he got that to the shoulders.
And 1 rep.
Excellent.
For Mateusz Kieliszkowski.
It's not if he's going to do it, but how many times? We need you right here.
Here's attempt number 2 now. Mateusz Kieliszkowski out of Poland.
His wheelhouse, his upper body, legendary. And he's really muscling it up.
Elbows are forward, up and back.
And that'll be 2. Mateusz Kieliszkowski picking up right where he left off in Santa Monica. not having a whole lot of trouble with the Austrian oak. 2 reps and counting.
And incomparable Zydrunas Savickas, 8-time champion here, finished with 4 repetitions with this implement 1 year.
3rd attempt for Kaliszkowski. Oh, and the crowd was trying to will that thing over his head, but Kaliszkowski will exit with 2 good reps, and he is the early leader.
Those are 2 big repetitions because
this next guy, though, is showing so much courage. 2 years ago,
okay, elbows are forward, hip drive, and then up and back. Locks his arms against the down signal.
Since the deadlift, you can
elbows
see
are forward,
that hamstring has
up
been
and back.
him. But if anybody can get this log up,
excellent technique.
Brian Shaw will step up to the Austrian oak next. Best finish of the competition was the elephant bar deadlift, where he finished 2nd. Has been dealing with a bit of a hamstring issue that he aggravated in that lift, and has gone back-to-back 8th place finishes since that opening event.
Brian excels at static events. So there are 3 basic categories of strongman events: grip events, static events where you stand in place like a deadlift or an overhead press, and then strength endurance, typically like moving to load something like stones or carry something or push something.
You can see that bandage wrapping his left hamstring. He was having that thing worked on quite a bit after day 1 of competition. It was after the Husafell stone carry. He was back behind the stage here, receiving quite a bit of treatment on that leg, and has it wrapped, and he's going to go.
There's probably a high hamstring insertion area that's bothering him.
Asking for the oak to be adjusted just slightly.
Attention to detail is legendary.
He's very good with overhead events.
He is chalked up.
Brian Shaw has been at this competition every year since 2010, and he has won it 3 times.
This is going to challenge his mental strength. He's got an injury and he's still pushing on.
First attempt for Brian Shaw. Mateusz Kaliszkowski is your early leader with 2 complete repetitions.
You can see it, Mark.
And 1 down, yes, for Brian Shaw. In a lift like this, how much of a factor is your hamstring?
Well, you have to be able to stabilize yourself and to push your hips forward and lock yourself under a weight. The hamstring glute mechanism is very important. You can't flex your hips forward if you've got a high hamstring issue, typically.
Inside a minute now for Brian Shaw. 2nd attempt.
Come on, Shaw.
The crowd trying to help out Brian Shaw, and he will not be able to lock that one out. And you can tell the leg is bothering him a little bit there. Has time for 1 more attempt.
Brian Shaw's gonna go again. This is insane. 15 seconds. Come on.
He's gonna have to hurry.
The heart of a champion.
Brian Shaw, 8 seconds to clear this one.
It will not happen for Brian Shaw, as you can tell how much he's hurting. And you said it earlier at the beginning of the day, there was some doubt as to whether or not he was going to be in the competition, and you quickly said, no, Brian Shaw is going to compete.
Yes, he will compete, even in pain and with those restrictions. Now, here's his good attempt that he got over his head. Push with his hips, elbows up and back. Had a difficulty, notice how he staggered. That's because he had difficulty actually flexing his hips forward, locking out.
Brian Shaw saying thank you to the crowd, and
everyone here was behind him, including me.
And they know that this man is not 100%, and he is still gutting through this competition. That will give way to the man on the bottom left of your screen, Mateusz Belshak. making his second career appearance at the Arnold Strongman Classic. He was 6th overall in 2018.
And the deeper we get into these events.
Now look, he's turning his attention to another competitor to say, you know, come on, let's go, let's get it done.
Belshock has gotten better with every event. Started out with that 7th in the opening event, and then 4th in the Wheel of Pain that kicked off the second and final day of competition here at the Arnold Strongman Classic. Second to last event, 5 total events in the most prestigious strongman competition in the world. A lot of money on the line here too. The winner taking home $72,000.
So these athletes, when they get older, get better at static events. So as a young athlete like Matyas, it's very important to continue to develop that static strength with deadlifts and overhead pressing, squatting strength.
So far, Kalishkovsky with 2 reps, the mark to beat.
But he had a definite improvement in his deadlift, so his static events are improving year to year.
Belshock will be the 4th man to take on the Austrian Oak, the 4th of 8 strongmen here in event number 4. First attempt for Belshock.
Right up! Belshock, the power!
Belshock has to stabilize it. He will not get credit for that rep. The athletes do have to wait for a signal from the judge.
Yes.
Now going back to the chalk.
So he pushed back, but probably pushed back a little bit too much, and it goes behind him. He did that at Santa Monica also.
Here's attempt number 2 for Belshock. Once again, a little trouble getting it to his shoulders, but now just cannot complete the press.
And it looks so promising now.
He rolled his eyes up. That was a golden opportunity to lock that out, which he had, but he couldn't get his feet placed. You have to have your body under control, under the implement, to get the down signal from the judge. And nobody's better at understanding this than Magnus Magnuson, the head judge.
Magnus Magnuson is right in front of Matyas Belshock. He's at the bottom of your screen right now.
Third attempt here.
Third attempt for Matyas Belshock.
Got to control that massive open.
Elbows are forward.
The press is not going to happen, and Belshock calls it.
Just didn't have enough diesel to finish it up.
Only 2 men so far have been able to get that thing overhead. That's not just Kalishkovsky, who's still your leader with 2 complete repetitions, and Brian Shaw was able to complete 1. The first part of this looked good for Belshock. It was the finish that he just couldn't put together.
Up and back, but it went a little bit behind him. He couldn't stabilize himself, and he knows he lost a golden opportunity. That fishing up to the chest, just couldn't get it up. I can tell you when you have a heavy log up to your shoulders like that, you don't feel the pressure so much in your shoulders. You feel it a little bit in your lower back. Mostly you feel it in your abdominal muscles.
Your current standings, we are now halfway through the 8 athletes. Kalishkovsky from Poland, still your leader with 2 complete repetitions, and Brian Shaw with 1. Mikhail Shivlikov is up next. Started off great with a tie for 3rd in the elephant bar deadlift, a 7th and a 5th in the Wheel of Pain.
So getting a repetition with this implement then puts you ahead of all others who do not and have to go to the lighter implement.
Come on, Shivlikov.
Shivlikov trying to get himself fired up. The Siberian Force getting set to take on the Austrian Oak.
Get ready for the man in the black beret from the Russian Special Forces, Mikhail Shivlikov. He's coming up to check, waiting for the whistle.
Shivlikov making sure everything is in the position in which he would like it.
Here we go. Once you hear
Mikhail
that whistle,
Shivlikov
90 seconds, the mark to beat.
will have 90 seconds to beat as many repetitions as possible, getting the crowd behind him. Checks with Magnus Magnuson, the head judge, and now Mikhail Shivlikov on attempt number 1.
Whistles on. 90 seconds.
Pitching to the chest.
And the press is good as Magnus Magnuson gives him the signal. One down from Mikhail Shivlikov, now the third man to be able to lift that over his head.
Get a reset. He's got over a minute left.
He's going to take his time, reset just a bit. Notice how most of these lifters, these strongmen, are using lifting shoes with that heel on them. And the reason for that is when you push back with that implement, it allows you to lean back onto your heels and maintain that position. Plus, it's a much more solid base to work from.
And that may not seem like a lot, but when you're dealing with something this heavy, just millimeters in positioning can make a difference.
Yes, and that's exactly it. It's that those tiny little details that make or break attempts at this level.
Second attempt for Mikhail Shivlikov.
Look at the match, Kalish.
He gets this, he would tie for the lead. And that is good for the Siberian Force, and he has tied with Mateusz Kaliszkowski, pardon me, for the lead. Kaliszkowski earlier with 2 complete repetitions. And Mikhail Shivlikov will complete 2 as well. Great performance from the Siberian Force.
Gets it efficiently up, rolling it back. His elbows are forward, pushes back. Got to hold it. Notice his elbows are forward, pushing back over his face. It goes a little bit behind your head, but again, we're talking about the details of being able to lock it out. Something about those shoes as well.
2 successful reps on 2 attempts for Mikhail Shivlikov, and that will give way to Rano Heinla out of Estonia, who has been pretty impressive so far in this competition. Third in the Husafell Stone, had him tied for 2nd place after day 1, but then he dropped down the leaderboard after a 6th place finish in the Wheel of Pain, trying to move back up into contention for one of those top 3 spots.
This is film review. This is actually doing a lot of lifting with the oaks.
Yes, from Estonia,
let's see what he's going to do now.
the land of George Hackenschmidt. So strongman is alive and well
coming to the oak
in his home country
Estonia,
with the tradition.
He's been powerlifting and weightlifting since he was 10. First attempt for Rano Heinla on the Austrian oak, 430 pounds.
That whistle, there's the whistle. Can anyone best
195 kilos on that thing. Heinla quickly to work, but just cannot complete the press.
Had a good start with some hip drive. Looked a little sluggish, like the weight was trying to roll forward on him.
I think that this next one will be a push press.
So that's why you want to drive your elbows forward as hard as possible to lock that log onto your chest. It also puts your elbows in a better position to push up and back.
I think that if we get this crowd to get
Only
behind
3 of 5 men so far have been able to get the Austrian oak over their heads. Rano Heinla, the 6th man out on this stage, now ready for his 2nd attempt.
Seconds left, halfway through his time. Looking to get 2 reps. Can he get his first here?
Once again, gets it to the chest. Closer on the press, but still will not go. And Heinla will leave without a successful lift.
Yes, correct. The 2nd attempt, he had a little more speed on it. What that does is it gives you a chance to have expended less energy to save for the upward movement of the implement overhead. A little quicker to the chest. Just couldn't get it over his face so that he can then drive completely back. Just to make a quick comment about him starting lifting at age 10. In the U.S., we're starting to have young athletes start in strength sports earlier.
Martins Lisis, who currently sits in 2nd place after his win in the Wheel of Pain. We saw him win that ARNOLDD STRONGMEN Classic in Santa Monica, and that was when we really figured out that this kid was going to be a contender when he got here.
Yes, he's someone that always comes on stronger through the end of the competition.
And he gets right to work. First attempt for Lisis. And he will lock it out. And now sits in the tie for 2nd place with Brian Shaw. in this event. Right to work on attempt number 2.
All right. Let's go, guys. Get behind him.
And Lisis will hit that one and is now tied for the lead with Mateusz Kieliszkowski and Mikhail Shivlikov with 2 successful reps, and he still has plenty of time.
He wants to dig down and get this 3rd rep. This would definitely separate him from the competition.
Looking to keep the pressure on Hafthor Bjornsson. Martins Lisis just 6 points back of Bjornsson in the overall standings coming into this event. 1 event remains after this. 3rd attempt for the Dragon.
Quickly up to the chest.
And Lisis out of gas, but does tie for the best mark so far with 2 successful reps.
That man is like a wild dog off the
And he did not waste a whole lot of setup time. He got right to work on this thing, and back-to-back quick, successful reps for Martins Lisis.
2 reps, he cleaned them. I thought he was going to
Elbows are forward, backing up.
When you hit the wall, there's no
Notice that on the 1st rep and actually the 2nd rep, he's got that right foot back just a little bit. Pushing
1st in 2 events, 2nd in
up
1 event.
and able to lock it.
He knows what he has to do, Mark.
2 successful attempts from Martins Lisis, and now the overall leader in your defending ARNOLD's Strongman Classic champion, Hafthor Bjornsson, set a record in the elephant bar deadlift with a lift of 1,045 pounds, then won the Husafell stone carry to go back-to-back on day 1, and was only 6 inches away from beating Martins Lisis in the Wheel of Pain.
Yes, the Icelandic giant. His father's probably close to 7 feet tall, and his grandfather is too, and they're both here in the audience watching him.
They are an easy family to spot walking through the crowd. One more look at the overall standings coming into this final attempt. The overall standings in this event, 3 men have completed 2 repetitions. Martins Lisis the most recent, and then Brian Shaw completed 1.
A 430-pound log.
He really needs to hit 2 reps and get himself in that pack, but then he can completely separate himself from the pack with a 3rd repetition.
Hafthor Bjornsson just needs to stay close to Martins Lisis, the man immediately behind him in the overall standings. Bjornsson leads Lisis by 6 points coming into this event, and this is his 1st attempt on the Austrian Oak. 430 pounds, 195 kilos. And that is easy for Hafthor Bjornsson. 1 successful rep is in. Hafthor, one of the few athletes in the field who actually weighs more than the log.
So it's giving him a little bit more in his legs. You don't have to really bounce so much. Well,
just needs 1 more to tie himself with the 3 other athletes who have completed 2 repetitions.
Clearing his head a little bit there.
The Mountain asks for some help from the crowd, and they will gladly give it to him on attempt number 2.
Help the Mountain out here, folks.
Bjornsson locks that out, and he has tied for the lead. And he has more time left on the clock if he wants to make another attempt.
He needs this attempt, and he'll basically lock down the competition overall.
20 seconds. Give it to him. 20 seconds. He can seal the deal.
3rd attempt for the Mountain.
Plenty of time.
No problem to the chest. And Bjornsson just cannot get under it. 2 reps, though, will tie him with 3 other men in this event. Thanking the crowd. And Hafthor Bjornsson will remain your overall leader heading in to the final event that will be later on tonight, the stone to shoulder, but he mauled that thing up on his 1st attempt.
Yes, super efficient up, very, very quickly up.
On the main stage with the stone to shoulder.
Elbows are forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, you enjoy the Strongman
Up
Championship.
and back.
I said, are you enjoying
Another
the
thing when you get a really heavy weight
Championship?
overhead like that is fighting that pressure in your abdominal muscles forward and making sure that you can lock the weight over your head.
And now the lighter log will come out. That's 385 pounds. The athletes who did not complete a single lift on the heavier log will now get to attempt that.
So just to set this up just a little bit, Sean, in Ravensburg Madness about 15 years ago set the world's record in the log press with 385 pounds. This is the consolation log now, and just to try to get as many reps as possible. So that shows you the evolution of strongmen and how being event specific and working with these logs has evolved over this time period.
Jerry Pridgett will be up first. He is one of 3 men who did not record a successful lift on the Austrian oak.
So don't leave. 385.
Matjaž Belšak and Ronald Heinle were the other 2.
It really does make a big difference. Now they're fighting for points. These points are placements. Placements is money. These are professional athletes. They know what they're doing.
Jerry Pridgett approaching the log, 385 pounds now. And he will go for as many repetitions as he can in 90 seconds. Pridgett struggling, but he will get credit for it as Magnus Magnuson gives him the down signal.
A little more ginger. He's not trying to be too explosive coming up with a little bit of an issue with one of his hamstrings.
Here's attempt number 2. Pridgett will call it, but he does get one successful lift.
Pridgett got one on the feather, and that could still earn him points, man. Yes, and
Jerry Pridgett with just one event remaining.
We kind of closed it out too soon. There's a lot left.
And everything was good about this lift, and then the only part he really struggled with was getting over his head.
Yes, because he had a little bit of distance with the log when he got it up to his chest. But again, locking your hips out, all those muscles that pertain to the posterior chain of the rector muscles in the back and the hamstrings, you need those muscles intact.
Matjaž Belšak is up next. And he is another man who has improved as this competition has gone on. He grew up in a family of cooking enthusiasts. His parents own a restaurant in Slovenia, and he actually works there sometimes as an apprentice chef. His powerlifting career began at the junior stages. He was 17 years old, and he won the 2017 Arnold Classic Europe Strongman and the 2017 Arnold Classic Poland, and he was a points qualifier in the overall standings to get here to the 2019 Arnold Strongman Classic and trying to improve on his 6th place finish from last year.
Not making his belt too tight. Just trying to get a little something for the abdominal wall to push on.
All right, he's approaching the bar.
Opposite of what people think. The weightlifting belt really doesn't help your lower back as much as it helps you push your abdominal wall against something.
Let's get 90 seconds, as many reps.
Matjaž Belšak,
at
385 pounds, 90 seconds for as many repetitions as he can get.
Belšak out left.
That is one good repetition for the man from Slovenia, and that one looked like no problem.
Yes, a very routine lift for him.
Once again, every man that did one
He's now tied with Jerry Pridgett, who also has just one successful attempt at this weight. Here's lift number 2. And Belšak will get credit for that one.
Very little hip flexion to drive that up with his hips. More of a strict press. He was very, very close with the Austrian oak.
But you see the difference.
Two successful attempts, and remember this implement, regardless of how many times you lift it, will not leapfrog you over the men who got at least one successful attempt on the Austrian oak. This is now for placement.
And the clean, but not as strong in the press.
Belšak going for 3. It's not done yet.
27 seconds.
Now lining up for attempt number 4.
Here we go. Look at this third rep.
2 good lifts for Maciej Belshak to put him ahead of Jerry Pritchett. One more man remains, and that is Ronald Heinle.
Another young athlete that needs to work on his static strength.
Record breakers after the guys finish lifting the feather. And
There we go. Good hip flexion, very explosive up. Elbows forward.
In this event. So Ronald Heinle now.
Back and above, gets the down signal.
He looked real good getting the big bar up.
Very good.
Here's Ronald Heinle from Estonia. He won the 2018 Arnold Classic Australia Championship to qualify here. 6-time Estonia's strongest man. And again, we mentioned started weightlifting at a very young age and started competing in strongman in 2000. 6 years ago, he tore his right Achilles tendon, and doctors told him he'd just have to recover from it. His leg actually swelled, and in his words, began to rot. 10 centimeters of his tendon were removed, and 6 surgeries later, he finally recovered and says it's an injury that he still feels to this day. And now his first attempt at the 385-pound log, and that is no problem for Heinle.
Yes, he handled a 385-pound log at the Santa Monica Arnold Strongman Classic quite well. Several repetitions. This will springboard him above Pritchett, and also in front of Belshak. He gets another repetition with this 385-pound log.
Belshak got 2. Can Heinle get 2?
Pritchett with 1 successful lift on this piece of equipment. Belshak had 2, so Heinle now on his 2nd attempt. And it looks like Heinle may not have gotten credit for that. He had it above his head, but he did not get the down signal, and that is a lot of wasted effort.
Well, we call that a postcard lift. If you took a picture at the right time, it looked like an overhead lift.
This is the 3rd attempt for Heinle. He needs to wait for Magnus's signal. He's at the bottom of your screen, and there it is, and that lift will count.
Still 30 seconds left.
Still plenty of time for Ronald Heinle to make another attempt.
Magnus is a great judge. If it wasn't set, he wouldn't have given them the down signal. So
Heinle struggling with it and won't be able to get it over his head. So 2 good lifts for Ronald Heinle will tie him with Maciej Belshak. Jerry Pritchett will finish with 1, as the 4th of 5 events at the 2019 Arnold Strongman Classic are now in the books. And Hafthor Bjornsson will take his lead into the final event and try to lock up his 2nd consecutive Arnold Strongman Classic Championship. Final results: 4 men with 2 successful lifts. Bjornsson was the final man to log 2. Brian Shaw gets 1. And then on the lighter log, Maciej Belshak and Ronald Heinle both get 2. And it's Jerry Pritchett who will finish in 8th place with 1 good lift on that 385-pound log. So one more look at some of the men who were able to get the Austrian oak up and over their heads more than once. We start with Maciej Kieloszkowski.
Well, the Austrian oak actually has a larger diameter, and that's one of the reasons it's harder to overcome than the smaller log.
Martins Lisis went quickly with good back-to-back repetitions. Was unable to get a 3rd. And now Hafthor Bjornsson, who just needed to stay close to Lisis in order to not surrender too much of his lead. He does just that with 2 good lifts. And here are your unofficial point standings after 4 events. Hafthor Bjornsson increases his lead now to 9 points over Martins Lisis. Mikhail Shivlikov moves into 3rd. Ronald Heinle is now in 4th. Maciej Kieloszkowski is in 5th. The disappointing competition for Brian Shaw continues as he is in 6th place. And Alexei Novikov, who was in 3rd to start this event, again, he was getting checked out by the medical team for an injury. He may not be out of the competition. He did not participate in this. If he is cleared, he will return. He's been impressive so far. 4 events are down. 1 remains. We will step aside for a moment, but the action is not done. The Rogue Record Breakers continues when we return to the Arnold Strongman Classic in Columbus, Ohio.